I guess Max gave you a pretty good introduction. Just very briefly, yeah, I've got with two friends of mine, a music management company and a record label and a publishing company. There's a couple of people who I work with up there, which is making me a little bit nervous. They're going to start yelling out, no, he doesn't do that. He beats us in the office. It's terrible. But yeah, so music management, record company and publishing company. And I'll try and make this as quick as possible. I grew up in Canberra, not much you can do about that, and really loved music from an early age. My older brothers were really into it, so started playing in bands in high school and was never very good, if the truth be told, but that's usually why you end up in management. And moved to Sydney, kept playing in bands, worked in record shops. Yeah, played in a couple of bands that were just indie bands who no one really have heard of. And then, to cut a very long story short, a couple of my friends, Andy and Pete, started managing each other's bands and made up the name Winterman and Goldstein Management because it sounded a lot more impressive than the actual reality of the situation. And they found that when they rung people saying, yes, it's Pete Lusty here from Winterman and Goldstein, they would start getting put through. So I thought that was a pretty good idea. And I was working at I was doing radio promotion at a record company at the time. I didn't really enjoy it because you had to go into stations that were never going to play the songs you were taking in, and you sort of had to, guess you had to be someone you didn't want to be and say, this is fantastic, this track is brilliant. It's number 2 on the Billboard charts. And they would either play it or they wouldn't. It just felt a bit false, I guess. Sounds like a teenager. Oh, so fake. And I did feel like a bit of a fake. And so with Andy and Pete, we decided to start a record label. We didn't really know how that worked, but we thought, well, how hard can it be? Fortunately, we didn't know the answer to that because it's quite hard. And we started putting out records, and so I started doing the management stuff with them. And then very briefly, the first band that we sort of managed that actually something happened was a band called The Vines, and that went really well. In one way it went really well. In other ways it was a bit of a train wreck, but it was a really good experience because they did well in America and Europe and stuff, and we learned a lot. But I guess maybe I'll just start my talk because I could just take you through my whole life history to today, but I won't do that. I think this is all pretty self-explanatory. I'll just go on to the next slide. No, I do want to talk about, so the theme of this month's Creative Mornings is make, and rather than talk about the act of physically making something or making music or making a chair or that kind of thing, I wanted to talk about, in my experience, the importance of making friends. And that sounds a little bit cheesy, but I think it's true. In my own case, I feel like I couldn't have done any of the things that have excited me most and been great experiences, successful experiences in the sense that you gain something from it emotionally. I don't mean you sell a million records or not that, the kind of success that actually makes you want to keep doing it, and the success that makes you want to get up in the morning and you don't even think that you're going to work, Like I think that's probably, I would think that everyone in this room wants to live that way, where you don't want to get up and go, oh, I don't want to do it, I don't want to deal with the sociopathic boss, and I don't want to, that's a bit of a broad generalisation, but it does happen. So the friendships that you form without even, you're not forming them because you think, oh, that's a great connection that I'll make, not like LinkedIn, which I still don't understand. if anyone here is big on LinkedIn, I do understand that it works. I don't get it, but I don't mean making connections or, networking. To me, that has that seems like a one-way exchange, networking, and it seems like it has a real, you've got this idea that if I network with this person, this thing will happen and I'll have that result, and that doesn't seem like a good exchange to me, whereas friendship, where you just go into it because you really like that person, you get on and you like any relationship, you have a backwards and forwards exchange of ideas, and that person, has ideas that excite you, and you get on and you really like each other's company. They're the things I think that if you get to that perfect situation where your work is your life and your life's your work and you're defined by what you do and you're really happy about it, it's all because of your friends and the friends you make and the friendships that you have. So as I was thinking about that, I started drawing this out, not on a black piece of paper with a white texter, by the way. I did not do that, but my friend Ian, who I'll get to, made that for me because he's good at that stuff. But I started just to make sense in my head of the things I wanted to talk about, how it all joined up through friends. So as I say, that makes absolutely no sense at all right now, but I'll come back to that at the end. I think if you have any sort of, I can understand how it's cynical. You can be cynical about that idea. I'm not suggesting anyone is, but like the idea of friendship. I think there's pretty good science to suggest that friendship is magic. I mean, if you look at Applejack, Rainbow Dash, even Spike. I wish I could remember this one's name. But I think animated ponies suggest that friends are important. As an aside, I was just thinking too, by the way, I know about this because I got a daughter, just so you know. That's why I know their names. But this is an aside, this has nothing to do with anything, but I just thought about it this morning. Apparently, there is a whole bunch of people called bronies, who are grown men who are really into My Little Pony and dress up in those outfits and have conventions. Anyway, that is not where I was going. So I thought, I just thought I'd go through some things that have happened in my own personal experience that keep me coming back to this idea that making friends and those connections, how important they are in what you do and where they lead you. So the fact that I've got the opportunity to talk here actually comes about through a friend of mine, my former neighbour, Ian, who's right down there in that beanbag, and very nice man. And we met because we moved in to the same block of apartment about the same time and had young families and used to run into each other. I promised myself I wouldn't cry, Ian. We'd run into each other in the car park and start chatting, and I thought, oh, this guy's a great guy. You're a great guy. We've got a lot in common, and I'm still not entirely sure what Ian does, but it's a lot of stuff I can't do, like filming things and editing them and computers and code. But not just that, really into music and just got on really well, became friends. That is when we met. Wasn't a lot of call for belts in 2008 when that photo was taken. I think that's me, and I think that's Ian. Lost a bit of hair since then, but it was a magnificent mane back in the day. So, through knowing Ian gave a talk here at Creative Mornings a couple of months ago, and he told me about it and then suggested to Max that maybe I could do one of these things. And obviously when I met Ian, I did not think, I'm going to make friends with this guy because I'll tell you what's going to happen. In 5 years' time, I'll be standing in a very creative workspace giving a talk. But that's just an organic, sorry for using the word organic thing that happens through, getting on with someone and talking about ideas and finding those ideas interesting and exciting. And, he knows that I like having those conversations, and so suggests it here. And, then I get to talk to you, fantastic people who are willing to get up at 8:30 to come and listen and to talk about this stuff. So, that's just a really simple one that sprung to mind. And also, this is a bit circular, but another friend of mine, Sunny Day, who has a fantastic design company called We Buy Your Kids, gave a talk here a little while ago, and he actually made coffee while he did it, which was pretty good. But he's a fantastic illustrator, and we've worked with the music management company and stuff. We've worked with him a lot through the years, and I'll come back to that, but so there's another connection there from what we do to people talking here to all that kind of thing. Now, please excuse me while I just check where I was going with this. Oh, wind it up. Seems a bit early. It's on track so far, which is good. When I started I joined Winterman and Goldstein Management with my two friends who'd been doing it for about a year. One of the guys doing that was a guy called Andy Castle, who I've been friends with since we were 16 or 17. And when we met, we hit it off straight away, and especially about music, and talked about music a lot, and went off and did all kinds of different things. And then we ended up living here in Sydney together, and he played in a band called that band, Youth Group. He's not in that picture. He'd been kicked out by that point. He'd left the band at that point to manage other bands. But so these guys, Youth Group, Andy was friends with this lovely man here, Toby, and they formed a band together, and through that, Andy, my partner, just took on the role of managing that band and trying to make things happen. And he's an incredibly enthusiastic person, and a very convincing person, and a very good person. And to the point where, when we started managing other bands, he actually had to stop playing in that band because he wasn't able to do both, and he had to make a choice, and he was like, I think I'm better at managing bands and playing in bands. So Andy, who played in that band, heard that band, The Vines. Obviously, before they were on the cover of Rolling Stone. I mean, that would have been too easy. I've heard of this band. They're on the cover of American Rolling Stone. We should look into them. He, and this is the thing I think about friendship, and how, like, when you work together with people, like, it's always, I think, you're always going to do something 10 times better than what you would do by yourself, because that exchange of ideas and other people's opinions gives you an opportunity to be better and think about things that you never thought about before. And when Andy first heard this band, The Vines, he heard them on FBI when they were doing a test broadcast. He heard them driving his car, and he pulled over and stopped the car. They were just playing a demo. And I was in the office, and I heard them in the office, and our reactions were very different. He came into the office, he was like, I have just heard this band on FBI, they're unbelievable. My God, I can't believe it. We've got to find out who they are. And I was like, I thought they sound, really? I thought it was all right. I thought they sounded like this 80s Sydney band called the Lime Spiders, who were good, but I thought, it's happened. That's already happened, But he was so determined that this is sort of email existed, but it wasn't, it certainly didn't exist for this guy. And it still doesn't. But Andy eventually wrote the singer there, Craig, a letter saying, I love your band, what is the story with your band? And got a letter back, a handwritten letter, with a cassette demo in it. But he was so determined to find this band that he went that extra yard, and then, we ended up managing them, and they had a lot of success initially. It was pretty short-lived, but they were the first Australian band to be on the cover of Rolling Stone since In Excess, like for 20 years or something. Interesting thing about this photo shoot, actually, is that Craig has 3 legs here. Yeah. I don't know who did that, but I hope they got the sack. But had he not had that enthusiasm, I would not have pursued it. I would have just probably dismissed it, and that would have been a classic Gwyneth Paltrow sliding doors moment. It was Gwyneth Paltrow, I think. Yes, I think it was. Or was it Cameron Diaz? One to think about. A little something to... I said I wasn't going to talk about Cameron Diaz and Gwyneth Paltrow, but they keep coming back, don't they? And I ended up, that period was so important in our business and what we do. It was a massive learning experience because we got to travel all over the world, mainly apologising to people, but sometimes also, learning stuff. We learned a lot and we met a lot of people who we would never have met, and made friends who to this day are still great friends. Some are still in the music industry, some are not, but some are not because of that band. But that is actually true of the guy who signed their publishing. Actually, he's not in the music industry because of them. Just remember, this is being filmed. That was a hypothetical. But yeah, they're one of my favourite bands of all time. I've never met anyone like Craig, the singer there, and I've never been involved in a sort of a chemistry of people like that. It's completely unique, and I felt very protective of them, because when they became popular, especially in Australia, a lot of people hated them and thought that the singer Craig being crazy was all an act, and I could assure people that was not an act, and it was pretty difficult. But I really learnt something from them, which is just like an internal kind of drive that doesn't exist when people talk about ambition. Oh, he's ambitious. That guy's really ambitious. It's like someone who was born and can only do one thing. Can't do a lot of other things, but can do one thing, and is incredibly talented at it. I think he's definitely the most talented person I've ever met, and he's also probably the most difficult person I've ever met, and that's an important lesson to learn as well. Like, there's a payoff. We all know that. Everyone in this room is creative, and I don't know how many people are crazy, if you know what I mean. There's some, I don't mean in a bad way, but I mean there's a payoff. There's probably some things that everyone here is really good at, and there's possibly a thing that tips the other way. But to have that creativity, it's worth it most of the time. In some cases, I think there's some cases where it's sort of a tragedy that you can't marry up the two. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, so getting that experience and learning all those things came about through being friends with Andy, one of my partners, who had that ambition and faith and belief in that group of people to want to work with them, and felt like genuinely felt like this is the best thing I've ever heard, and I want people to hear it. And I got to go along on that ride because of that friend. And then because that band was doing well, we then, I suppose, for the first time ever, had we're in a position where people would return your calls. That was good. That was a new one. Because it's hard, it's like hard in any industry. It's so hard to get in, and it seems like this closed shop. And in many ways it is, that's the truth. But because of that, a friend of Andy's called Sam rung him one day and said, I have just seen this band in Melbourne who I reckon you would really like. They're really good. There's something about them that's really good. And that was Jet. And so Andy flew down to Melbourne. He just happened to be, I think, 9 times out of 10 he would have been doing something else or couldn't be asked, but he went. And he came back to us and went, I just saw this band, they are crazy, it is crazily good. They're like the Rolling Stones, except they're 20, and they're fantastic, and we have to work with them. So we met with them, and only because we managed the Vines, I think they met with us, because they thought, well, that band's doing well, they must be doing, there's a reason to talk to these guys. I don't think, I mean, they had a lot of people talking to them and wanting to meet them really quickly. And we were just so lucky that we'd had that experience with the Vines where they would at least take us seriously. They were actually already managed at that point, and so we've got a publishing company as well, and we put in a publishing offer, which was laughably low, as we discovered when everyone else put in their publishing offers. It was like, a bit embarrassing, sorry about that. Still like you though. And as it happened, because we, I guess, had got on with them and their manager at the time, they called us back and said, we're not going to do a publishing deal with you because that is, frankly, a ridiculously low offer, but would you be interested in managing us outside of Australia? To which we said, yes, of course. And I think, again, that's because, we made a connection with those people and we got on with them. And, it was genuine. It wasn't like, we've got to sign this band because they're going to be successful. Because no one knows. That's the thing. You have no idea if something's going to be successful or do well. You can't. If we knew how to do that, it would be pretty easy. It'd be game over, really. You're just going on gut instinct. And sometimes it's right and sometimes it's spectacularly wrong. And we actually thought, to be honest, we were like, if Jack can sell, if they can do half as well as the Vines, that'd be a good result, And as it, they went on to do, I think that record sold like 4.5 million copies around the world, and it was just crazily good. But then, funnily enough, too, as a diversion, sometimes when that stuff's happening, this comes back to why making friends is so important. When that stuff's happening, when you sell that many records around the world, strange to say, a lot of dodgy people come out of the woodwork, get in their ear or get in your ear and want to, I guess, perhaps divert you from your plan. And sometimes when those things are happening and things are really outwardly fantastic, sometimes internally they're really horrible, And I think that's the importance of friends and friendship as well, is that a lot of people want to be your friend when things are going well and then drop off when they're not. I mean, I'm not saying anything new there, but the importance of having people that you've been friends with for a long time and you have a genuine connection with is just as important, if not more important, when things are going gangbusters, as it is when things are not going gangbusters. So that's another friendship rainbow connection there. I'm going to take you back to Rainbow Dash. Jumping back a little bit, just around the time we got involved with the Vines, I used to do like independent radio promo, music promo, and I got a job working here in Australia on this White Stripes album, White Blood Cells. And I didn't know anything about them at the time, but thought the record sounded great. And they put out 2 albums before that, nothing had really happened. And then just got very lucky in that a friend who I used to work with at this record company had started his own company and said, would you do promo on this? And that's a pretty good stroke of luck, just before they were about to blow up. I don't suggest for a second that me working on the album in Australia was the secret to their success. It was really just someone handing it over going, have a listen to that, sounds pretty good. At the same time, I was still playing in a band called the Monarchs, so I don't think I need to explain who they were. Just as I thought. But at the time I was working on that, we played on the big day out, the year that these guys played on the big day out. And so we used to play before them every day. I was going to say night, but it wasn't night, it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And their friend, who's this guy here, Ben Swank, who's an absolutely fantastic guy. He was their guitar tech and sort of general man on the scene, and got on really well with him, had a lot of really good times with him on that tour. Absolutely lovely guy. And he also played in a band as well. This was just people from Detroit who, exceptionally talented people from Detroit, who had a bunch of friends who were just that part of their own little scene and had been for a long time, and then for whatever reason, you know, the zeitgeist or whatever, everyone went, that is actually a really good thing, and it started blowing up. And so Ben played in this band as well, and then once Jet and the Vines started touring and playing festivals in Europe and stuff, used to keep running into them all the time, and Ben in particular, and really got on well. And it's pretty, you know, that's a great thing too. You know, you end up doing this stuff and it's like, God, some guy you met in, you know, on the Gold Coast at the big day out, you see at, you know, some music festival in Europe, and then get to spend, you know, a couple of hours hanging out with that person, and then it's a really good feeling, you know. It's like a little bit of familiarity and a connection. So that then led to, I guess about, so anyway, just stayed in touch with him. Sometimes, you know, would run into each other, you know, and then periods would go by when we didn't. And then, I guess about 3 years ago, I started managing this girl, Lanny Lane, and when I first saw her, I had the same feeling as I had when with Andy and Pete saw Craig from the Vines perform for the first time. I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but I absolutely have to, I really desperately want to work with that person. There's just something incredible. I thought she had an incredible voice, incredible, you know, presence, and great person and great songwriter. So ended up managing Lanny, and she was recording some demos. She did about 4 songs and gave them to me, and I was like, whoa. Those are my exact words. Whoa. And thought, God, this sounds awesome. I think this could be the start of your album, maybe. You know, these songs that she banged out in 4 days. And I didn't tell her, but I thought, I reckon Ben Swank, there he is, holding the camera. I reckon Ben would like this. At this point, Ben was still working with Jack White. I was going to call him Jack, but I think that's a bit too familiar for the reality of the situation. Jack White has this probably most people know it, has this unbelievable record label called Third Man Records, which I think is one of the greatest record labels of all time. It's only been going for 5 years. But Ben Swank was working with Jack White running his record label. So I just emailed Ben with a track that Lanny had recorded and said, hey, I've just started managing the... I said, hi, how are you? You know, all that stuff. Hope you're well. Always put that stuff in, people love it. Just started managing this girl who I think is fantastic. Lanny, I thought I'll send, here's a couple of tracks, just be keen to know what you think. I reckon they're up your street. And he came pretty much straight back and he's like, wow, her voice is amazing, I love it, it's great. Do you mind if I play this to the boss? Not Bruce Springsteen. That would have been good. But Jack White, and I was like, oh, I'd rather you didn't, to be honest. Don't really want that guy hearing it. I said, yeah, please. That'd be good. And then a couple of days later, he wrote back and he said, oh, he really likes it. Is it okay if he emails Lanny? Again, I said, I'm not that comfortable with that. I'm the manager here. Tell him to back off. No, I said, yeah, that'd be amazing. And so I was sitting at Adelaide Airport with Lanny one morning, and she had her phone out, and then she was like, can you read that out? It was an email from Jack White saying basically, it's pretty good, he's like, hello, my name is Jack White. I'm a music producer from Nashville, though we know who you are. It's okay. Yeah, and he said, I really love your voice, love these songs. If you are interested in coming over to Nashville and recording a single with me, that'd be great. Again. I was like, back off, dude. Not at all. It's like, what an incredible opportunity, what an incredible thing to happen to someone who, you know, she admired so much And I admire, it's not about me, but I admire, I'm standing up here talking, it's obviously a little bit about me. Yeah, and that he is so open to that sort of, well, basically someone sending a song and going, yeah, I'd like to record that. I think that's unbelievable, and that's a mark of a really good person, and that's just the great luck and great fortune of aligning yourself with good people. Not align, that sounds a bit strategic. Just the fact that you get to meet good people, and they're good people. It doesn't matter who they are. Like, you know, there's people who are very successful who are unbelievably great people, and I'm sure there's others who are not, but that probably wouldn't change regardless of where they were at. We did. We went to Nashville, and Lanny recorded a song, 2 songs with Jack White, and it was an incredible experience for her, and yes, well, obviously for me as well. I'm not going to lie about that. It was amazing, and we got to see the inside of Third Man Records and how they run it, and everyone there was a great person. Like, could not be nicer. It was very inspirational, and that, I forgot to scan it, so I'll just hold it up. So that's the single that she made with Jack White, and oh yeah, and the other thing is, so these photos are also taken by another friend that I made 10 years ago in England, who now works with Jack and is his photographer. He's a beautiful person. But one thing I did want to show you about this single, might be long. And just roll the dough until it's pliable. That'll just roll itself for a little while. Keep an eye on it, and then just pull the record out slowly. You don't want to break it. Jeez. Sorry, but that kind of attention to detail, that's a beautiful artifact, I think. You know, sounds great and looks great, and that, I think that's why I think that, you know, what they're doing over there at Third Man is such an incredible creative thing, because who else does that? Who else puts that level of attention into stuff? And it's very inspiring. So it's very inspiring for a new artist to see that and be surrounded by that, and also to have the experience where she was treated as an equal. It wasn't like, well, I'm the big old rock star here, so just do this. It was completely equal. So what an incredible experience. And then another friend thing, right? Amazing, check this out. That photograph, which I love, I think it's an incredible photograph, was taken by this geezer. And he is a lovely man called Dean Chalkley, and he's an incredible photographer who 10 years ago, or whenever it was, with the Vines, when things were going well for them in England, he took a series of photos of the band for NME, who he worked with a lot at the time. He's gone on to he does great, he makes short films and does fashion photography, and he's a real mod, you know, so he's really into the mod scene, and he really documents that scene amazingly. But so we met him. He took great photos of the Vines. I stayed in touch with him. I sent him Lanny, actually, at about the same time I sent it to Ben Swank, because I just thought he'd like it. And he was straight back. He's like, I love this, you know, if you're ever in England, let's do a photo shoot. And I mean, yeah, of course I won't lie, I did want him to take photos of her. You know, that wasn't entirely like, you might just like this and nothing will happen, but that's fine. It was like, it would be really good if you could take photos of her. So then, you know, I think after that trip to Nashville, we went to England, and there he is, just snapping off a few photos of Lanny, and then that becomes the album cover, you know. So it's sort of kismet, and it's sort of something that you can kind of guide, I think, those things. Not in a, again, I keep saying it, but I really do mean it. Not in a way where if I do this, this will happen, and then this will happen, and this will happen. You want there, I feel like you want there to be an element of genuine connection between it, or it doesn't work. I don't think those photos would be as good if it was just a, there wasn't a genuine connection, you know. I think it makes for better art, you know, if people are like actually emotionally invested in it. I'm sure that we all feel that, but you know, we've probably all had experiences where you maybe go and work with someone or do something or get someone to make something that for you because they were the person available, and the result is not that great because you don't have a sort of a genuine connection. You don't maybe understand each other properly. Those things can be really frustrating, and I guess, you know, when you're relying on friends to do it, if there's so much more connection right from the start that you're going to come up with something that you like. I will finish this talk. Maybe not today, but certainly before Christmas. Go back in time a little bit now. I used to play in this band called Glide. Again, like the Monarchs, I hardly think I need to explain who they were. Back in the old days, you used to have the old 8x10s, you know, the old, you know, on paper. Don't really know what they called it. Photographic paper, maybe. So, yeah, I played in this band with these guys. That's me up the back with a bob. Best up the back, I think. And, but this band, so this band, we put out a record, and in 1990, maybe 95, 96. Hard to believe, I know. I don't look that old, but there it is. It got played a lot on Triple J, as it was back then. But in particular, by this guy, Francis Leach, who was a announcer on the station at the time, and he was a real champion of our band, which we were very appreciative of. You know, more so than anyone else in there at the station, and he used to play us every shift, and we would do interviews with him, and we got on really well with him. He had great music taste, we thought, and strangely, and but just a lovely guy. And I stayed in touch with him on and off for many years, and then he went on to work in sports broadcasting more. He went over to work at ABC Grandstand, and he worked on what's basically a football station down in Melbourne, SEN, and he's got an incredible knowledge of music and incredible knowledge of sport and politics, and you know, he's got a big brain, big heart, and sounds a bit like Friday Night Lights. Bad reference. Get it back, get him back, get him back. Last year, early this year, I had this idea, because I as well as music, I love football, AFL football. Stay with me, I'll try and keep this quick. But I had this idea that there's a lot of similarities in the way people look at those things, and there's a lot of I just noticed that I talk to a lot of people in music about football, and when I meet people who are involved in football, they're really fascinated by music. So I had this idea that I wanted to start this blog where people that liked music wrote about football and vice versa, and called it Presentation Night. I haven't done a slide, which is a little bit of an oversight, but it is real, I promise. It's on the internet. So Francis, but I wanted to have a live show that was like a conversation between a footballer who loves music and a musician who loves football, and put it on in Melbourne. And I thought that Francis is the perfect person to host that, because he gets them both. And through the friendship, I rung him and said, are you into this idea? Because I thought if he's not into it, I can't do it, because he's the only person that can really hold it together. And he said, I am into that idea, and let's do it. So, quick diversion. Put him in a holding pattern. Put that idea in a holding pattern, just hold it there for a second. Oh God, I've gone back to youth group. That's unusual. Yes, it is, because We Buy Your Kids, the graphic design company I talked about ages ago, of whom Sonny is a part, his partner Biddy is friends with youth group and did this single cover for them. That was, I think, her first freelance single cover, artwork job when she left her job. And it's incredible, and she made a beautiful animated film clip for youth group, who my partner Andy played in. And that's how we met Biddy. So then when I came up with this idea for presentation night, I went to Biddy and said, Biddy, is there any chance that you might be able to do a poster for me for this idea presentation night, where a musician talks to a footballer hosted by Francis Leach, who I met playing in Glide. Let's think about that for a minute. I only say that because I just have to check what I was going to say next. Sure. And very quickly, I managed to get Paul Kelly to do it because I'm friends with his manager, Bill. And he wasn't 100% sure about it at first, but because he's a friend, he ended up doing it. And I really wanted this guy, Bob Murphy, who's a massive music fan who plays football, to do it. And I had no idea how to get in touch, so I just got his number off a friend who knows him and texted him and thought, it was a bit loose, I know. Luckily, he came back and said, oh, that sounds good, give us a call. You know, and I think it's just about how you go into these things. Like, you genuinely wanted to be a part of it, and then here they are. Look at them, they're having a whale of a time. Absolutely fantastic. Just 3 friends up there having a chat about music and football. But in summation, that's how I thought about all this stuff I've just been talking about, this mad scribble of connections and friendships. Is that's me, there's Ian, who is the reason that I'm doing this talk. Sunny Day gave one of these talks from We Buy Your Kids. He's the partner of Biddy. Biddy designed a youth group cover ages ago. Biddy did the artwork for this presentation night show I do. I played in this band Glide. Glide knew Francis Leach. Francis Leach hosts presentation night. Oh, there's presentation. There's Creative Mornings. Sorry, that's got their own section there. I'm friends with Andy Castle. We formed a business together. He's friends with this guy Pete. So we're friends and business partners now. Andy found the vines, ended up working on the vines. Dean Chalkley took photos of the vines. He also took photos of Lanny Lane. I sent Lanny Lane to Ben Swank, who gave it to Jack White. Dean Chalkley's taken photos of the White Stripes, but I also did their album back in the, whenever it was. Did it. I gave it to someone at the radio, let's not overstate it. I played in a band called the Monarchs. Yeah, who played with the White Stripes, so we've got that connection sorted. What have we got here? Yes, Andy Castle was friends with Sam. Sam told him about Jet. We ended up managing Jet. There they are, connected back to Pete, who managed them. And I think that's how that bit worked. So I think in summary, it's like a Year 12 presentation. In summary, I guess what I wanted to say over a long period of time was everything we do, like, it's just none of it's any good. None of it's any good or satisfying if you're just doing it in isolation. You know, sometimes I think it's a crazy thing when people go, look, we just make music for ourselves, and if anyone else likes it, that's a bonus. I think that can't be true. Why would you want to make something that no one liked? Like, you want people to like it, you want the approbation and approval of your friends. When you do something, you have that beautiful period of just being caught in the moment and lost in it and making it, and you're making, so what am I, I don't know what I'm making. I'm carving a swan, wooden swan. I was lost in it, I was very into it. I showed it to my friend, they went, excellent wooden swan. So I've done some ducks as well if you want to see them. And, or whatever it is. And all those experiences and everything we do it's enhanced by our friendships, and it's enabled by our friendships. And I guess that's, making friends. It sounds, ooh, making friends. But why would we even think that's a slightly corny thing to say? Like, it's absolutely essential, You just can't do anything in isolation, and you need your friends. You need your friends when things are going well, you need them when they're going badly, and you need them to make it, what you do, feel good, and to feel good about yourself, and to encourage yourself to keep doing those things and live that life that I talked about at the start, where your work and your work is your life in a really good way. Like, what you do is your work, and that's your life, and it's the same thing. And when you're 80 years old and sort of at the end, I'd hate to raise that now, it's a bit morbid, but you know what I mean. We all know we know that. You want to look back and go, what do I what do I take away from it, you know? And if it was like, I didn't have any friends, but I made a lot of wooden swans, it's not going to be as good as I made a lot of wooden swans and I made a lot of friends and they liked my wooden swans. Honestly, don't know where the wooden swan thing came from. Wasn't planned, but you know what I'm talking about. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sorry I was a little bit, went off on a few tangents, but thank you for staying with me. And thank you very much to Max and to Flynn and to Ian and you know, to everyone here for coming. I really enjoyed it, and thank you.